want me scared, you want me weak, you want me brain dead and asleep. You want us trapped while you all laugh behind the scenes. You want us sick, you think we're dumb. You want us blind and you want us drugged. You want us poor while you get more of everything. But you don't get to tell me what to think and what to do. No, you don't get to tell me what is true. 'Cause you're just liars, cheats and crooks. Change the rules and you burn the books. And so I don't believe a single word you say. You're all liars, fakes and cons. Want you out and we want you gone. So don't believe this time you'll get away. You want us tricked, you want us numb. You want us scared and you want us stung. You want us shot and you want us fought in every way. You want our minds, you want our time. You want us framed up in your crime. I hope you know that it's time to go and we're taking names. 'Cause you don't get to tell us what to think and what to do. No, you don't get to tell us what is true. 'Cause you're just liars, cheats and crooks. Change the rules and you burn the books. And so we don't believe a single word you say. You're all liars, fakes and cons. Want you out and we want you gone. So don't believe this time you'll get away. 'Cause we see la 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 all your lies. La 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 all your lies. You don't get to tell us what to think and what to do. You don't get to tell us what to think and what to do. You don't get to tell us what to think and what to do. You're just liars, cheats and crooks. Change the rules and you burn the books. And so we don't believe a single word you say. You're all liars, fakes and cons. Want you out and we want you gone. So don't believe this time you'll get away. 'Cause we see la 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 all your lies. La 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 all your lies. 'Cause we're just liars, cheats and crooks. Change the rules and burn the books. So la 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 word you say. 'Cause we're all liars, fakes and cons. Want you out and we want you gone. So don't believe this time you'll get away.
Alrighty. Let me make sure that we're now audio. That's default. I want to go to the good mic.
All right, let me double check that again. Muted on locals. Let me see if it's better now. Okay, let me go listen to myself for 2. Okay, go to the live. Wait. There you go. That's the booming, beautiful radio voice and radio face of Viva Frei. I started early unexpectedly today because my man in Canada told me that there were parliamentary hearings in Canada, at which the great Rachel Gilmore shall be testifying on the Russia bullshit. I don't give a crap. Bullshit, people. Rachel Gilmore, you might remember her from such horrible Twitter accounts as at Rachel Gilmore, who cries, I mean, sometimes literally, but Rachel Gilmore is Canada's equivalent of Taylor Lorenz. Maybe Taylor Lorenz is actually a little more evil than Rachel Gilmore. But let me put my phone. Rachel Gilmore is Canada's Taylor Lorenz. So just operate on that equivalency if you don't know who Rachel Gilmore is. But if you guys are from Canada, you know who she is. She has been apparently summoned to testify in the very same Russia, tenant media, Lauren Channel, Lauren Southern idiocy coming out of Canada. I said, I can't ignore that. I have to see if we're going to do it. So that's on in the backdrop when I see that come live. And Peter McIlvenna is going to come on, let's say like 12:30ish, and we're going to talk about whether or not the UK has fallen. And what better segue into whether or not the UK has fallen by starting with whether or not Canada has fallen. But before we even get into any of that, we're going to start with the sponsor of the day, peeps, which is the Wellness Company, because many of you know that Christmas is right around the corner. As I toggle up the beautiful, there's a beautiful B-roll that they like me to play here. This is the B-roll, people. Look at this. Amazing. Go all the way back here, and we're going to play this. It is the holiday season, people, which means it's the flu, sick, sinus infection, strep throat, upper respiratory hacking season. Everyone's traveling and everyone is passing it around. But guess what? You don't have to deal with it all on your own this year, because there's a little blue case right there that is your mobile urgent care. It has medications like Z-Pak, ivermectin, amoxicillin, 6 other prescription medications at your fingertips. Thanks to the Wellness's medical emergency kit, you can tackle everything that comes across your body this holiday season without ruining your holiday plans or winding up in urgent care, which, if you're in Canada, might be a 12 to 14-hour wait. The kit cuts through the red tape by allowing you to take control of your health. I should say it's not available in Canada, so that's a problem. Versus being reactive and inconvenienced during precious family time. You don't need a gatekeeper, because the medical board has created a guidebook that outlines the treatments for UTIs, strep throat, bacterial infections, respiratory illness, and more. All it takes is filling out a digital intake form. Your kit arrives to your front door in 1 to 2 weeks, but only if you're in America, unfortunately. I don't know how you can get them in Canada, but that's it. You travel in peace this holiday season. Order your kit by going to twc.health/Viva. We'll get you $30 off and free shipping. USA residents only. The Wellness Company, twc.health/Viva. And that promo code gets you $30 off and free shipping. Let's see if this was the hedge here as to whether or not there's actually going to be any hearing. It's 12:05, and I don't see Rachel Gilmore in the backdrop. Let me see. Here we go. This is okay. So this was the risk, although it's good because let me see something. I'm going to ask anybody watching who has access to my cell number or email address. Record the parliamentary hearings. I'll go back and watch it. Oh, you know what I can do? I can record it on my phone while we go live, and that way I can watch it afterwards. Oh lordy, you know what's going on in Canada, and it should be. Oh, I really, really kind of want to see this. Let's give it a few more minutes. People, everybody's also following the news that's going on in the world. Hold on. What does this say? Viva is very professional. What is... Oh, just saying. Laughing my ass off. Better. Okay. Whoa. Right when he said ivermectin, it cut to an Ozempic ad. Well, at least that means they're running ads on my stuff on YouTube still, which is, small blessings. The stream with Ian Carroll is still up and still monetized on YouTube, although... they have their other ways of soft censoring what they don't like. Speaking of which, just a bit of an intro. I put out a video exclusive to local supporters earlier today. There's something funky going on the interwebs in terms of sowing massive social unrest on social media. I have, some might call it a right-wing-ish following on Twitter. I don't think it is. I think it's right-minded people, although I'm not so sure anymore, because the replies that I'm seeing or the stuff that I'm getting in my Twitter feed as relates to the murder of the CEO Brian Thompson. And you go on the internet, you expect to see stupidity from the left. And what I'm maybe realizing is that At some point, the fringe left and the fringe right unite right on the back of that circle and espouse equally idiotic, indefensible ideas. You go online and you see people saying things about the Daniel Penny case, which are utterly, utterly incomprehensible. Let me see here. Was it who was it that said something utterly incomprehensible? And I don't have it on the back. Saying things like, "Oh, now I guess everybody gets to kill people on a metro station now." That's what they take away from the Daniel Penny acquittal. No, you just get to kill people now. If you're an idiot, that's what you took away from it. You're AOC, and you get out there and say, "Oh, it got away with murder." You're an idiot. The people out there equating Kyle Rittenhouse to the alleged killer of Brian Thompson. If you make that comparison, you're an idiot. But the people in my reply, I put out a tweet earlier today saying, in quotes, "The killing of Brian Thompson is terrible, but it really highlights the bad way the healthcare industry treats their clients." End quote. Because literally Bill Burr came out and seemingly ratified that message to his massive audience, saying the reason why the media in America is not up in arms about the cold-blooded assassination, murder, extrajudicial execution is because how bad the healthcare industry treats their customers, their clients. I had someone say, denying coverage is murder. Only if you're an idiot. But the people in my thread saying, "Viva, you're defending big pharma lobbyists." I'm not defending anybody except for the extrajudicial assassination of big lobbyists. Yeah, you can be against lobbying without being for extrajudicial assassination. I got to pull one up, which I genuinely have to choose to believe is one of 5 options. Doesn't even matter. A little piece of shit, Kyle Rittenhouse. If that little piece of shit, Kyle Rittenhouse, gets to walk free, so should this guy. Oh, what was? I mean, maybe I have to say, I have to steel man this. Tweets like this, they could be one of multiple things. First of all, let me just make sure that I'm not missing Rachel Gilmore before Parliament. I'm not. It's still, we're on hold there. We might have to scrap it. Bot engagement farming. Okay. Intelligence astroturfing, which I'm also convinced might be going on right now. Everyone should read the book or listen to the book Chaos, about how they, basically used, or the CIA intelligence experimented LSD on people, broke their fucking minds, a la Charles Manson. And when Charles Manson got arrested for the Tate LaBianca murders, where they were trying to start a race war, and we don't really know who was trying to, break their brains to try to cause them to start that war, to demonize the hippie movement. There was a lot of deep state intelligence at play, if only as a result of the experimentation on real people with real LSD. But I believe some of this looks like intelligence trying to astroturf a faux public support for what is nothing shy of terrorism. Could be trolls. It could be 4D level parody. I mean, because this could be parody. You slap on the B there, it's parody. Or just dumb people with broken brains who can't compare comparables, can't distinguish things that are not the same, or actually believe that Kyle Rittenhouse just went out and started plugging away people on the street. Yeah, if that little piece of shit Kyle Rittenhouse gets to walk free, so should this guy. Oh, why was Brian Thompson chasing Luigi, the alleged shooter, down the street? Was he trying to beat the living crap out of him? Oh, no, he was doing his violence in a much more passive way by denying claims. I had a back and forth with someone who said, whether it's murder by a gun or murder by a denial of claim, it's still murder. No, it's not, you moron. I mean, it's literally not murder. Anyhow, okay, so we might actually not get the coverage of Rachel Gilmore, so I'll have to come back to that afterwards. If you don't know who Peter McIlvenna is, Hearts of Oak. We're going to get into. I know more about Peter than he thinks I know about him now. I've listened to many podcasts and interviews, and I dare say I've never met him before, but I like him already. We've met via tweet. We're going to get into this. Northern Ireland, Irish. He's going to explain his own background here, and we're going to talk about whether or not Canada, the UK, the West as we knew it, has fallen to the point where it can no longer get up. Does everybody remember that ad from the 80s? The medical alert, I've fallen and I can't get up. And then she pushes the button. That's the West right now. Right on life support with that button. Peter, I'm bringing you in. 3, 2, 1. Booyah, sir. How goes the battle?
Viva Frei. It is great to be with you. The battle goes on.
You know what I'm listening to, and I feel like I'm talking to the guy from Bridesmaids, the Irish character who's the boyfriend in the love guy in the movie.
Oh, yes.
Even the inflection, the tone. Peter, for those who may not know who you are, who are you?
I'm not Rachel. That's certainly true. I don't know if that's a downer on anyone. My Peter McIlvenna, born in Northern Ireland, studied aerospace, always wanted to fly. Flying is my passion. Aircraft, I'm a plane buff, and then 9/11 happened, so that screwed that up. I ended up moving to London, worked in a church, probably the largest black majority church in the UK, worked there for 10 years, then got involved in engaging on current affairs as a research assistant to the senior minister, engaging on Islam, on a lot of the issues that we faced in the West, in the UK as a church, and trying to educate the congregation. And then after that, got involved in politics. So was in UKIP for 5 years, which is the one and only Nigel Farage's party, which is known as the Brexit Party and now is known as Reform UK. And a lot happening on that, even today, which we'll maybe touch on, which is some good news for once in UK politics. But I worked in the last 6 months, I worked as national campaign manager for the United Kingdom Independence Party in the local elections and the European Parliament elections. That was a lifetime ago, 2019. And then after UKIP delivered its goal, I mean, which political party delivers its goal? The point of UKIP was to get out of the European Union, to get Brexit. When that was achieved in some shape or form, what do you do next? Because I don't think there's ever been a political party in the history of political movements that had a single goal and achieved it spectacularly and then wondered, what do we do next? So UKIP basically disappeared after that. Nigel Farage started Brexit Party and then Reform UK, which is now polling, I think, second place in the UK. Phenomenal job. And after UKIP, I started up an organization called Hearts of Oak that was originally going to be like a town hall conversation around the country, educational event, basically what UKIP, what politics should be doing and wasn't doing in the UK. So we started that on the 28th of February 2020. 2 weeks later, we couldn't leave our front doors. So I thought, this is probably the stupidest launch of any company ever. 2 weeks before a lockdown. So we thought, what do we do? We had mass lobby of Parliament planned. We had an educational day planned. So we thought, let's start doing interviews. And about 800 interviews later with 250 different people. It's been a phenomenal journey, all underneath freedom of speech. And there's so many topics you cannot talk freely about: the whole LGBT agenda, the clash of Islam in the West, the freedoms in the West. And then, of course, during the last 4 years, the COVID tyranny that we faced and all the conversation you couldn't have there. So it's just calling out things, discussing issues that really you're not allowed to talk about. And if you're not allowed to talk about it, Viva's probably similar to you. If you're told you can't talk about it, you say, well, why not? I want to talk about it. What's the issue? Why restrict this to the public? And it's been a phenomenal journey over the last 4.5 years of meeting some phenomenal people all across the world.
So you're because this is I'm from Canada. I live in Florida now. But I've lived.
I understand the move.
Yeah, well, I mean, and whether or not it's temporary versus permanent, we'll see. But I've never the Canada today. If I were to say, compare today to what it was 9 years ago. Let's just say when Trudeau came into power, it's not just a different world. It's a different universe. It's a different realm of reality. And watching what's happening in the UK, you can't help but look at parliamentary British style governments and say, what the hell is going on? But backing it all up, like even before you were born, you're born in Ireland, right?
Yep, born in Belfast, but lived in the Republic. So we have funny issues with Ireland being split, all that happening. But born in Belfast, Northern Ireland, lived in the Republic, Dublin and Limerick, then back up north. So been all over the island of Ireland.
I once heard that there was a man from Nantucket. Sorry, I've been waiting to plug that joke when I found out you were actually from Limerick. People, you know what Limericks are. That's the So born in the Republic of Ireland.
Born in Northern Ireland.
In Northern Ireland.
But then moved down. It was 6 months or something. We moved down to the Republic of Ireland. My dad was a pastor, so we went down. He pastored a church in the Republic of Ireland.
Now, because it's relevant only because of Northern versus Southern Ireland, pastor Catholic or Protestant?
Protestant, which was weird in the Republic of Ireland. So Baptist church, which was a weird concept. I mean, in Belfast, there's a church on every street corner, Protestant. So there's a Baptist church, probably 24 Baptist churches in Belfast. You go to Dublin, there are 2, and Dublin's 2 to 3 times the size. So very different understanding of spirituality and of church, north and south.
It's an encyclopedia on its own, but just the history of the fight between Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland or England. Could you summarize that or just synopsize it? Because it's going to be relevant when we get into current day religious issues in the UK.
It will. And I mean, I grew up in a town in Northern Ireland that was free from all the troubles that we had because it was a 99% Protestant. And again, this was not a religious issue. This was a land issue. Mm-hmm. So religion was put in it to cover up, but it was basically a land, whether Ireland should remain independent or whether it should be part of Great Britain, the United Kingdom. So I grew up under a Union Jack, being a proud Protestant, a proud Unionist, supporting the Democratic Unionist Party, Ian Paisley, which was the party that wanted union. The Unionist Party is in union with England, Scotland, and Wales. And then you had the Republicans that wanted to be free and have a free Irish state. So Ireland was basically used as a playground, I guess, for the English. And English kings used Ireland to give pieces of land to knights, to dignitaries as a reward. That's in effect how it went. And you had these clashes between those put in by the English to manage an area and the Irish kings. So you had that clash for hundreds of years. And then in 1921, Ireland was divided. So Ireland was taken by the English. And I say that as a unionist, thinking Ireland has always been better with Great Britain, although maybe that could be called into question now. It was always a poor country. England was a richer country. So even economically, it made more sense. But in 1921, there was the division. So Britain took Northern Ireland, which was 6 counties, and then the other 26 counties were left in the Republic of Ireland, and the Free State, the Republic of Ireland, was founded as a separate nation in 1921. So that's the history in a nutshell of Ireland.
Okay, and now it is. I got into it, not a fight, but I said something insensitive to someone back in 1999 who was from Ireland, who refused to. At the time, I'm trying to figure out which way I said it. I still believe that there was a border between the not Northern Ireland, but the Republic of Ireland and the rest of the UK. And I don't know if I was wrong at the time. This is back in 99. Doesn't matter. I said something, and apparently people are very sensitive still about the fight between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, England. All right.
It is complicated.
I found all history is complicated when you haven't lived through it, but when you've lived through it, it's part of your DNA, which is why I can relate to what's happened in the world in the last 10 years in a way that's much more difficult to appreciate when you didn't live through it. You wanted to become a pilot. 9/11 happens. That doesn't happen because they put on pause all hiring. How did that work?
So that worked. That basically it was insurance was the issue, and airlines didn't know what was happening. I remember watching 9/11. It was in Belfast, walking through one of the shopping arcades, and there was a pub showing what was happening. I remember watching it, and I'd applied to 2 airlines and got letters back to go for interviews. And the next day, every airline had their sponsorship schemes cancelled. So on the front page of every single airline in the world, it was that all hiring, all sponsorship schemes had been cancelled. Now, thank goodness I had not started that, because those who have maybe proceeded, who were near the end of that 18-month, 2-year process, that would have all been scrapped, and they could have been left with debt. So that was difficult for them. But the issue was insurance, because if you cannot get insurance as an industry, then you cannot run your business. It wasn't necessarily the high costs. It was not knowing what was happening, but with insurance companies saying, we don't know if we actually are able to insure planes anymore because no one knows what the hell is happening. So it was that stopped and put a pause on pilot sponsorship and selection for probably 4 years, certainly. And then they started opening it up and everything changed. So back in those days, you got full sponsorship. You paid it back over maybe 5 or 7 years with the airline. Now, hey, you put up your own $100,000, £100,000, $130,000. You pay that out of your own pocket, and maybe an airline will then come and take you, and you can fly for them on a zero hours contract. So everything has completely changed the industry from an industry that people looked at and had a dream of the prestige, I think, of being an airline pilot, to now here you're on a zero hours contract with £100,000 debt. So good luck flying with some of the low cost airlines that you could have a 25-year-old pilot who doesn't know whether he can pay the bills at the end of that month. And the worst thing you want in a plane is a pilot being stressed. That's not what you want. So that's what we have today.
It's amazing. I mean, I guess the stuff that people watching today are going to be particularly interested in is that the UK has been in the news, I mean, for a while now. And I'm trying to track back to see when it started going south, like when the UK started going downhill, when Canada started going downhill, when you lost the freedom of speech in Scotland, Ireland, the UK at large now. And I never appreciated at the time how monumental Brexit was, and how it was Trump getting elected, then, if I'm not wrong on the chronology, then Brexit. And it didn't just, I didn't realize how monumental it was, but also how it broke systems and led to the sort of tyranny that we're living through today. Explain for those who might not appreciate how monumental Brexit achieving its goal was at the time, given the expectations.
So the European Union is, in effect, let's take it for a US context or Canadian, or it's in effect NAFTA being based in Mexico and telling everyone north of the border, this is what you will do. That's in effect, no country would accept that, passing over their trade, surrendering everything to do with their nations to a foreign nation. And yet in the European Union, which started off as a coal and steel alliance with 6 countries back in 1956, I think, and has gone from an economic alliance, coal and steel, 6 countries, to a wider than an economic, into a political, and then into a legal, and then into a financial system. And that's now it holds it together so tightly, it's so difficult to get out of. And the EU is, in effect, has been run by, although things are now changing very quickly, but by a Franco-German axis. So the French and Germans have always been the powerhouses in the center of the European Union dream. They tell other countries like Greece what they have to do, or Ireland what they have to do on both sides of the continent. But they decide what economic policy is. They decide what is the best politically. They decide what legal policy is like. And they decide what monetary policy is like. So you'd, from an economic, coal and steel, then moving into, from the European Economic Union or European Economic Confederation, EEC, into the EU, European and Economic Union, to the European Union, which dropped the economic because it became a political alliance. And that's now what it is. And the smaller countries are forced to adopt. So whenever the crash happened in, when was the financial, in 98, the crash, and Greece and Ireland were bailed out, they were told, you take this medicine or you're screwed. And they were forced to adopt crazy economic restrictions for getting that aid, something like the IMF, or give to countries, and they control what happens economically to that country. That's what happened. And Greece had to put huge taxes on their tourism industry, And all the Greece have is tourism. They literally don't have anything else. And Ireland were punished for what they had done. So it's moved from that simple, let's trade, let's have a free trade zone in effect, to a controlling zone in every area of your life. And Nigel Farage was there at the beginning of the United Kingdom Independence Party in 1993, when it was a crazy idea. I also worked for Lord Pearson of Rannoch, who was one of the original Brexit rebels, conservative Brexit rebels, and then left to join UKIP. And he said he read one of these treaties and he couldn't believe the transfer of power. And he asked, is no one reading these treaties? And obviously no one was. So it was happening under the radar. And the Brexit movement, the freedom from the EU, was a cottage industry. And it built and built and built. And then Nigel built that as someone who, with his charisma and his drive, only someone like that could have done it. And he then was able to get a Brexit vote, which we won 52 to 48%. And we've had Brexit in areas, but not in other areas. So the problem was, just to finish off on this point, the problem was you get Brexit, it's like getting a new car. But if you don't have a driver's license for that particular car, you can't really do much with it. And Boris Johnson got the steering wheel for Brexit, but he literally did not know what to do with these new freedoms. And there were so many possibilities and dreams and ideas of what the UK could be. And now we've gone from Boris Johnson to Keir Starmer, who doesn't know what policies he thinks, doesn't know what a man is or what a woman is, never mind actually what to do with this economic freedom of the UK.
No, how familiar are you with Keir Starmer's role that he played in the rape gangs?
So well, he was head of the CPA, the criminal prosecution side. So he actually headed that up. Now, how much he was involved in that or not is very difficult to know. The rape gangs that have been basically Islamic family rape gangs have happened across the UK, and up to 1 million girls have been affected by those rape gangs. And that's happened since at least 1978. And a blind eye was turned until Andrew Norfolk, the Times journalist, published a story on the front page of the Times in 2012. And that was the first time this really became public. But we've had the police and the Crown Prosecution Service collapsing cases. And you scratch your head and you wonder, how can you not want to put men behind bars who have carried out childhood rape across country? And yet it is silenced and no one wants to talk about it. So the connection with Keir Starmer, who was head of the highest prosecuting body in the UK and decided what cases would go forward or not, that's very difficult to know as becoming more and more murky.
It's interesting. The rape gangs. I'm trying to look up the Muslim population in the UK over the decades. I mean, we know that it's seen a rapid. I don't know if it's it's a spike, and I don't know if it comes from natural birth or immigration, and I suspect it's immigration. And when you talk about France and Germany leading policy for all of the European Union, and you go back to the 2015 Syrian refugee onboarding, which wildly shifted the demographic of all of Europe. I can now exactly understand why Britain's like, let's get the F out of this union, which is whoever's pulling the strings are not pulling them in the favor of Europeans, whether they be Muslim, Christian, or whatever. They're not doing things in the favor of Europeans. And I know you've been on with Tommy Robinson, and I've had Tommy Robinson a few times on. When did the demographic issue of the UK really start becoming noticeable and producing social strife?
So mass immigration changed in the 90s, and it was to do with Tony Blair, who became Prime Minister in 1997 on a wave of euphoria of something new, fresh. And he came in 1997, and by the end of by the end of his first 3 years, by the end of the century, we had gone from having immigration levels in the 50,000 a year to immigration levels probably 400,000 to now immigration levels of just under 1 million. So we have had a huge change in the demographics, in the society, in the structure of the UK. And when you look at net immigration, it's always been in the low tens of thousands, always been 30, 40,000. If you look at the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s was the catalyst where the doors were opened up and seemingly everyone could come in. And into that, you had, up to then, we had immigration from the Caribbean, the Windrush generation. We had immigration from Southeast Asia, especially from India, many countries. But the issue was, and this has been raised by a number of commentators, that Islam seems to have an integration issue. It has problems integrating where other cultures have come in and been part of the larger culture and wanted to be part of it. Islam seems to have a separation, and that comes from the legal system, Sharia law. It comes from the food system, halal food. It comes from the education system. It comes from how women are treated, etc., etc., etc. So when you have your own special segregated areas in all of those, then that is separation and not integration. And I don't think anyone really knew the impact that would have. And the numbers, so we have the Lord Pearson asked a question to the government, I think 3 years ago, and they said over a 15-year period from up to 2022, I think, 2021, up 15 years up until 2021, the increase in the Islamic population was 107%. The increase in the UK population as a large was 10.5%. So it's 10 times. So although the Islamic population is only 4 to 5% in the UK, in London it's 12%. You look at Paris, it's 15. You look at Brussels, it's 30. But in terms of the UK, it's only 5%. But the rate of change is 10 times the national population. That's why by 2030, 2035, we will have the same clashes that Paris have non-stop. And
Did
Brussels
you say
will have.
You said Brussels is 30%?
Brussels is 30% Islamic. 30%. The center of the political dream of Europe is 30%.
And I'm saying that I say like set aside all judgment. I mean, it's not even if someone were to tell me, I can only take the analogy that nobody can get mad at me for. Brussels is 30% Jewish. I would have the same reaction. I mean, how did that happen? If someone told me that Brussels was now 30% Nigerian, I would say, how did that happen? How did that happen with Brussels, and over what period of time, and as a result of what? Because there's free mobility across Europe, especially under the European Union. Why is Brussels the hub? I mean, some will say it's a very small country in any event, so 30% of a small population is a big percentage, but a small number. Why Brussels?
I haven't delved into it deeply because you could look at other countries that maybe have, I guess Belgium maybe has a less strong identity than you may take in Germany or France, but this is happening in France as well. This has happened in Germany as well when Merkel opened the borders, and you've got mass immigration into Germany. Why specifically Brussels? It's strange because it is obviously the European Parliament is based in Brussels. And I remember applying for a job in the European Parliament with the UKIP group, United Kingdom Independence Group. And I looked at there and I thought, I don't think I want my family growing up, because you've got the protected gated areas that are lovely for the members of the European Parliament and their staffers. But you go to some of the suburbs and they are not nice places at all. Certainly not very European. You don't feel as though you're in Belgium. So there have been massive changes in Brussels, as there has been in Paris. Huge changes in Paris with running battles. And why Paris has had those running battles and other cities is another interesting question. And I don't think any of us have got to the bottom of it. But I think what you see, the tinderbox in Paris will be a tinderbox that sparks elsewhere. And London hasn't had those riots apart from apart
from the recent ones, which are what put London or put the UK back on the international map of ridicule, public shame and public ridicule. It's an amazing thing. Like I want to make sure I get my numbers right. But there's a study, or it's old, it's outdated, but it says that 40% of the Muslim population live in Belgium, lives in Brussels. 17% of the population, but it's an older study. I'm looking at Canada. And it's just a wild thing because it's very much analogous, and you wonder who is pulling these strings or making these orders. But Canada, 500,000 foreign new immigrants yearly, give or take, and coming predominantly from, I just want to get it right. It was China. It was in India, Philippines, and China at last check. And when people say, like, I know the flack that you and Tommy get for even discussing this stuff, but on the integration issue, like we're seeing it in Canada now with the Khalistani Indians, and it's a non-judgmental thing. People want to racialize it. Any foreigners coming into a new country that refuse to integrate creates problems, and it creates strife among the population, and it's being done simultaneously in numbers that are extraordinary, that are so in your face. But then when you talk about things like the Great Replacement theory, you're called a racist, even though they literally say that this is the replacement because we don't have enough population. Who I won't ask to hypothesize. Who is pulling? Who's calling these shots in the UK?
Well, why it's happening is because of a lack of identity and lack of understanding of what it means for the nation state, and that's why looking at the US is something that we are doing in the UK, because there is a strong sense of identity despite the mass immigration that's happened. Europe are having huge issues. I'm going to say Europe are in their death throes. I think they are, because the nation state has been so damaged by the European Union project, and people are told, actually, you're less French, you're less Belgium, you're less Italy. Actually, we're Europeans. We're all one. No, we're not one. They're separate identities of each nation that have had battles for thousands of years for those pieces of land.
No, you're Europeans, except the French and the Germans just had a bit of a clash, as did the Germans and the rest of Europe. By the way, I forgot. Hold on here. Just got here. Did Viva ask him how old he is? I didn't ask you how old you are yet, Peter. You seem to be 39.
I'm at another 8 or 9 years onto that.
We're roughly the same age then. I have a thing about asking everybody how old they are. Hey, look. Okay, and Macron, I forget what video it was, and I felt bad because I was a little too harsh on Macron on Twitter, but comes out talking about defending the Europeans. And I said, you know what word didn't come out of your mouth once in that video, you globalist POS? France. Like, you weren't hired to or elected to represent Germany. What's her face back in the day with the Syrian refugee crisis? Merkel wasn't elected to flood other countries because of their whatever guilt they have from World War II. But now someone in the chat said, "No, no riots." But there have been riots in the UK now because of turmoil. In the same way, we're now seeing areas in Canada, literal no-go zones. I lived in Paris in '99. And I won't say it was bad back then, but you knew not to go to certain banlieues. There were just ones you don't go to. There were no-go zones back in '99, which I understand have only amplified in size and plurality, number. You've lived through this. I mean, what's it like to see this happen to your country?
It's depressing, and I would love to just make the jump over and probably go and live in Texas or Virginia or Florida's too much of a swamp for me. So I can't. I got my pilot's license in Florida, Naples. So I've good memories of Florida, but no bugs and sweat.
And just so nobody misunderstands, you mean a literal swamp, because it's marshland. It's literal. It's like it's rainforest. There's some place with forest. I've grown very much in love with it, but I mean, there's beauty in the flatness. And when you go biking, it's all flat, but you see gators, turtles, snakes, beautiful birds. But I can appreciate it's too hot and humid for some.
I used to love when I landed in Miami when I got my pilot's license 18 years ago and drove across Naples, Alligator Alley, and it is special. It's something you remember, but I also remember the heat at 8 a.m. in the morning, whenever the sweat's just in your eyes, and you're sitting in an aircraft, a 152, on the taxiway, and you cannot see because your eyes are stinging with sweat. I remember that vividly.
What size planes did you fly?
I did 152s over there, and then I got my license and came over and did got a Cessna 172 and then flew Piper. So yeah, I got my license eventually. And in the States, when the exchange rate was 2-1 back then, it was beautiful. It was cheaper to fly to America, get your pilot's license, fly back. That was half the cost of getting it here in Blighty.
A 152 is a tiny plane.
152 is a tiny plane.
Okay,
A
fine. I
little
had to-
two-seater. You feel every gust of wind.
I was going to like pretend I knew it. I had to just go make sure that I knew what I was looking at.
Oh,
So you see it now. Tommy's gotten very vocal about it. From what I understand, you've gotten very vocal as well. You've gotten involved in politics. What the hell happened within? I mean, Keir Starmer. So let's do that. He was involved in the police for the prosecution of the rape gangs, and we're calling that like the grooming gangs is too much of a soft pussyfooting euphemism. Rape gangs gone on for years, decades. Now, I know that Tommy and a lot of people not focus on, but emphasize the Muslim rape gang part of this. One of my issues with all of this is there were a lot of elites, UK elites, not Muslim, who were apparently involved in, which might explain why you had a system protecting the perpetrators, because it involved the political elite of the UK. How the hell does Keir Starmer become prime minister?
so, and you're right to flag up what you said, because my issue is with the white liberal establishment that don't know what they believe and therefore are so afraid of tackling something which does not fit with our freedom, with our understanding of freedoms. So you're right. My issue is with the police, with the local council officials, with our judges, who were afraid to call this out in case we had a race riot. That was the issue the police used, not to call this out. So I 100% believe the problem is Islamic in how the infidel is treated, how non-Muslims are treated, how women are treated. Whenever you take someone from a country and they've never come across a woman who isn't clothed head to foot in a cloak, and suddenly they see women wearing next to nothing, then they think, well, they have the right to do what they want. And that's why you've signed it. In my local train station, there's a big sign that sexual contact with a woman is not acceptable, and here is why. I mean, how on earth do you need to have that in a culture? Because you've got people who don't understand how you treat a woman. So that is, but my issue and my anger is against the white liberal politicians who've chosen to turn a blind eye to this out of fear. Now, Keir Starmer fits in with Emmanuel Macron here. You can never be too forceful or too aggressive or too critical of Macron. So please never think that. Whatever.
Well,
no. Never
my issue was that it was unrelated. It was a troll where I said you didn't mention France once you POS, and didn't you get fuck your teacher? And then people don't know the history to that, and they think it's like and it was never intended to be a mocking of an underage kid getting sexually assaulted by his teacher. It was the fact that the French government and the French media has covered up the ratification of pedophilia in French politics. The kid was 15. They lie and say he was 16 because that's the age of consent, and the media covers it up for decades because he went on to marry his assaulter. I mean, it's ratified, institutionalized degeneracy, and that's my point with that, and that it's effed up from beginning to end on both ends of that. It's messed up. But he's a bad bet.
100%, and above all that, he is extremely weak individual. He thinks he has the right to be there, because he was one of the youngest leaders of France, because suddenly a political ascendancy that came from nowhere, and he's there as a very weak person, as someone devoid of policy or ideas, seemingly as well. Same as Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer has got into power after 14 years of this so-called conservative and name-only party, and he's not very sure what to do. So he is a very weak leader, a vanilla politician, and you wonder who is behind. And of course, he was very involved in the Trilateral Commission, and that's a whole other area. Very similar to Trudeau. Trudeau is a pathetic, weak man, and the last person you'd want to lead your country.
Trudeau, he's cute and he's got nice hair, and I literally remember those being things that people were saying in 2015. By the way, if it looked like I was laughing when you were talking, I have to show you. Speaking of weak men, there's a punchline to this. Look at this. I love it. It's a boss move. And then they said, and here's Macron's hand after that. Yes, he is a weak man. Some hypothesize other things about Macron and his wife, who some people don't think is a woman for that matter. But set all that aside, weak men. It's the old thing. Weak men make hard times. No, but what was that was getting to the problem of how it got there. One thing, actually, before I forget, the white liberal, and I've read the Malcolm X quote many times, being the problem in terms of the cowardice to face a problem is one thing. Am I wrong in thinking, and am I going down a rabbit hole that doesn't exist, that there were actually, call them white liberals, and it doesn't matter if they were liberal or not, but there were politicians who were involved in the grooming or involved in the exploitation, so that the cover-up was to cover them up, not just a matter of cowardice and the race riots, although a factor might have just been a cheap excuse to cover up their pedophilia and sexual exploitation of children?
So yes, no, and I think so. So
I love that.
So the rape gangs, the Muslim Pakistani rape gangs that have happened, and you've got 420 men are now in prison for that. You've had 70 trials across 40 towns in the UK. So it is rampant all across the country, widespread. So that is one issue of Muslim families basically deciding they can take women and they can pimp out women, basically, and girls, young white girls who they think are fair game. You've got that on one side. Now you've got a lot of discussion on, in effect, pedophile rings happening in places of power and politicians being involved. Now, there's been a lot of discussion and conversation and reporting on that over the last certainly 5-6 years, maybe longer. And no one has quite got to the bottom of it. There's a lot of innuendo, a lot of suggestion. It would kind of fit what we think has happened. Whether or not it is completely true, I've held off because I've always wanted to, if I'm slower to the story, but actually I've come at it with truth, I would prefer that. And often the danger, as you know, Viva, on social media, that people jump on something and then realize it's completely wrong and the damage is done. And that's the danger. So I've always held off on that, but there's always been suggestions and rumors and journalists discussing that they have evidence of sex rings basically happening in Westminster. So that's my yes and no answer.
No, and it's fair, because for me, it's just applying what we know from other jurisdictions, what we know from the Epstein business or Abercrombie and Finch. I've gone down these rabbit holes now. They've traumatized me. If it happens somewhere, it happens everywhere to some extent, but it doesn't necessarily always happen the same way. And you remember up in Canada, there was the serial killer on the Picton farm guy, and people were hypothesizing that that's where politicians went to do the terrible things, and that's why they covered it up or whatever. I'm not convinced in that case, but that certainly doesn't mean I don't believe that Canadian politicians are involved in the dirtiest of stuff on earth. And when you have this systemic problem that spanned decades and predominantly white girls, correct? I'm not wrong on that.
It's nearly all.
When you have that, it's there has to be a damn good reason for a systemic cover-up, and preventing racial disharmony, although a shitty bad excuse, can't be the only excuse. So, but then that brought us into Keir Starmer now, who was part and parcel of the problem, and now is part and parcel of an even bigger problem, which is turning the UK into, I don't want to insult.
Go on, say it.
A tyrannic shithole, much like Canada and much like America was on the verge of under what would have been a second, the extension of the Biden regime. It's undeniable. Like I've been following it since Count Dankula was jailed for teaching his pug how to do a Sieg Heil.
So good. He is so good.
And by the way, everybody, I found it funny. So cancel me. I found it funny. It was the cutest little thing on earth, doing the most heinous thing on earth, and that was supposed to be the joke. Dude went to jail. You got Tommy Robinson, who was locked up for contempt, which is just the pretext to punish the political guys. What we've seen the UK descend into now, and on steroids under Keir Starmer, would have been America under Kamala Harris 2.0 of Biden. How? Why?
So, Tommy is in, I think he's now 5.5 weeks into an 18-month sentence, because he, for contempt of court for showing a film to show the failure of our institutions and how it's been targeted, and lawfare has been used against him like no other. Probably only Trump is the only other person who's had lawfare used against them more. Tommy's book, his first book, Enemy of the State, because he is an enemy of the state. Because of the wide support he has. So that's that situation with Tommy, and he languishes in a prison probably 20 miles from where I live. And I'll head to see him.
Which prison is it?
It's up Milton Keynes. He was moved Wood Hall.
Okay.
He was in Belmarsh, which was the number one. So get that he went to Belmarsh, and I know you interviewed him just before he went away.
Yep.
And Belmarsh is the number one top security prison. Why would someone contempt of court, a category D offense in terms of ABCD, be put in a category A prison? It does not make sense. It's like someone in the States showing a film they're told they shouldn't show, and therefore get put in a supermax prison. It just doesn't make any sense. You're there with all the terrorists and all the sex offenders that are the biggest threat to society, and you've got some bloke who's showing a film online. That's his crime.
Well, no. If I may hypothesize, do you know what the Muslim population is of that particular prison?
25%.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, that's because and again, people, this is, you can call it whatever you want. These are just the stats. It's roughly 25% of the prison population in the UK is Muslim, who represent now, you said it's roughly 6% of the population.
4 times the prison population than the national population.
Yeah, it's wild. I actually thought the Muslim population of the UK was higher than 6%. Canada's almost at 5% now. But that might be the reason. I said it back when he went away in 2018. They wanted him to get killed, like the guy who died in prison, the one who went to prison for putting a ham sandwich in front of a mosque.
Yes.
I don't remember his name, but
I don't know his name, but yes.
So Tommy's away. I think the only person who's been victimized more by lawfare would be Alex Jones out of America, but still they didn't lock him up. So sorry, go on with Tommy Robinson.
No, exactly. So that situation with Tommy, and we are in a vacuum in the UK because and this is why it's exciting what's happening in the US with President Trump and what's happening with Europe and the rise of populist parties. Because the UK, we haven't got anything. We've always been a 2-party system, Labour, Conservative, left, and a little bit more left. And it's a uni-party back and forward. The Conservatives think they should be in power because they have a right to be in power. And the Conservative Party started 1832. I think the oldest political party in the world. So they think they have a right. Labour, a much newer party, a socialist party. But there's very little to put between them. And in the UK, we have Keir Starmer, who's just going to turbocharge woke and a socialist agenda that so-called conservatives have put that in place. I mean, you look at when Boris Johnson, the wonderful Boris Johnson, that supposedly was a great hope. And I remember campaigning for him whenever he was campaigning mayor of London in 2010 or 2008. I mean, he could have stopped the trans ideology against kids. And we were the second country after Netherlands to start those child experiments. He could have done something. He didn't. He could have shut down immigration. He didn't. He could have begun to rule out cases to prosecute the rape gangs. He didn't. He could have stopped. In the UK, 1.5% of rape allegations end up in a prosecution. 1.5%. We're the lowest in Europe. He could have actually said, we're going to put money into our legal system and tackle this. He didn't do that. We've seen the demise of the church. To now it has zero credibility and zero say. So a so-called conservative leader has not done anything to promote and champion in British identity, has not done anything to strengthen our borders, and has not done anything to go against the crimes that we've seen done in our society. So that's all under conservative government, from Cameron to Theresa May to Boris Johnson to Rishi Sunak to now a Labour politician who's just going to carry on the destruction of the UK, and it will go faster. That's all that's going to happen. There's no step change. It's not really much worse. So yeah.
Was there? Did Keir Starmer get elected through political jockeying, like we saw in France in their recent election?
Nothing is as bad as how France did it, and that is a warning to all of us how democracy can be subverted, and that's a whole program in itself. He got in because the Conservatives were so bad.
Well, if you could, could you condense it? I mean, I think I understand how it happened. That Francis, I mean, something of a parliamentary system as well, and so you had in the multi-party state, you had certain what would otherwise compete with each other candidates. Like I say, like from Canada, it would be like the NDP and the Liberals. Instead of running in the same district against each other, one agrees to pull out so that the other one basically gobbles up the votes, which are effectively for the same party anyhow. The differences between the NDP and the Liberals are non-existent. That's basically what happened in France.
It was because you had, I think, out of the 600 odd constituencies, you had 450 or 500 that were tri groups. So you had three major parties running against each other. And of course, Marine Le Pen was running in each one. And then you had the left kind of divided. So the left came together after the first vote where Marine Le Pen did hugely well, and they panicked. And for the runoff on the second vote, they came together, the left, and they agreed which parties would pull out. And that level of manipulation, I've never seen that in the UK. I've seen where you might have a party pull out of maybe a dozen seats, 15 seats, 20 seats, but to do it on hundreds just to skew the vote. So that meant when a voter went, if they were going to vote for left wing A, left wing B, or Marine Le Pen C, and they didn't want Marine Le Pen, they wanted A or B, then all those votes were put together. And that's why the left did so well. Despite that effort, Marine Le Pen still got the most seats in Parliament. She still won in effect, but because the other two parties were larger together, they've come together and they kept Macron in place as a weak leader. That's why the collapse of the French government, of the prime minister who's put in by the president, that's why he was forced out, because the far left and Marine Le Pen, who I don't even see as right, because her economic policies, her socially, she's very middle of the road. Economically, maybe a little bit more to the right, but it's certainly not this frightening extremist party that everyone talks about. It's fairly common sense.
But it. I mean, I just met up again with Christine Anderson when she was in Florida, and they call her the far right extremist. It's basic common sense, and it's effectively what the Clintons of the late 90s, early 2000s were saying. But I have actually let me show you this. So it's going to bring in the WEF here. Did you guys? So he just has a landing page on the WEF. It doesn't mean anything. What I found funny. Look at his eyes. It's a psychopath. And I'm going to look at his eyes. And if you don't know what the Sanpaku eyes comparison thing is, let me bring this up, which is totally wild. It's a Japanese method of, I can't do side by side. Look at Keir Starmer's eyes and understand the eyes of a psychopathic killer. Just get that burnt in your memory. And let's go back to Keir Starmer on the WEF. And you tell me if you don't see those exact eyes. Yeah. Just throwing that in there for the fun of it. Keir did not rise to power with a similar type of manipulation of the multi-party system like we saw in France.
No, he stepped into the vacuum, and the Conservatives were doing so badly. And remember, it was the worst defeat for the Conservative and name-only party. Yep. The biggest defeat in over 100 years, and the biggest electoral success for Labour since they were founded back in the 40s, 30s. I'll get my dates wrong. But so it was a seismic change, and it went from the Conservatives having an 80-seat majority in a 650-seat parliament, so 80-seat majority, to Labour having a 200 majority. Literally, Conservatives got wiped out down to 120 seats, and they're left as a rump. Keir Starmer has taken power, not because of any great policies, but because he says, we are not them. We are not them. That's all he did to campaign. He gets into power, and he sits there, obviously having no idea of what he's going to do with his power. Simply to Boris Johnson in Brexit, he didn't know what to do with that power. Keir Starmer hasn't known what to do with that power. And that is where I think, and the WF is not an issue I've delved into deeply, but that is where you wonder what is behind this, what is driving it, because it doesn't seem like Keir Starmer is driving it. And even if he was removed And there's a lot of stories about him in his personal life and cover-ups. And there's a super injunction, I think, out on some of that. So that all sits there. But even if he was removed, you would get just someone as bad, if not worse, in power. So removing him does not fix the issue, because it's endemic hatred of Britain, of the British way of life, on the culture of society, on any Christian basis in society, and further integration and part of it. And it was, I've forgotten her name, who was prime minister for 45 days. Oh, I've forgotten her name. She talked about the deep state. I think she went on with Bannon and talked about the deep state. And that was the first time in the UK, really.
Liz Truss.
Liz Truss. Thank you.
I can't pretend I knew it. I just Googled who was prime minister for 45. I'm Jamie.
But she, and that's a whole story, how in 45 days she was brought down by concerted effort worldwide, with the European Central Bank, with the Bank of England, with Biden, with the European Union, all coming together in a concerted effort to remove her, because, hey, she wanted small government, low taxes, and power back to the people. She was conservative, basically.
I gotta say, I don't want to sound stupid. I didn't even know who she was. I didn't know that happened, people. I was going back to Canada. I forget who our female prime minister was. It lasted like 30 days. I'm gonna go Google that. This is. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. So when you look at Canada, you've got. I've had Maxime Bernier on, and I really love what he's done with the party. You've got Pierre, and I can't pronounce his second name, who eats apples in interviews. Oh, yeah. But so you've got individuals who are very focused and who understand what it means for the nation state and understands the evil that has been imposed on the population. We don't really have that in the UK. And you have it in France with Marine Le Pen. You have it with AfD. You mentioned Christian Andersen, the AfD, Alternative for Deutschland, are polling, I think, 20 or 21% in Germany. Germany have got elections on because their government has just collapsed. So that'll happen probably in February. That's exciting to watch. You've got Meloni, I think, getting more of a backbone in Italy. And I was massively critical because I thought she was going to come in like a steamroller, and hasn't. But I think maybe she's been smarter and been slower and had to work with what she was given. That's given her the benefit of the doubt. Let's see how that develops. But then, of course, Orban over in Hungary, Swedish Democrats exceptionally well up in Sweden. You've got the Vox party and the party coming second in Spain and third in Portugal, out of nowhere. You've got a lot of bright sparks happening. The Czech prime minister, he wore a MAGA hat whenever Trump got elected. So there's a lot of populism in Europe, as in the nation state, and putting that first. And we are seeing that partially with the Brexit party or the Reform Party with Nigel Farage. And I think Nigel could go much further in what he's doing. But it's positive that we have Nigel, but I would love Nigel on steroids. I would love him to really boost for more than what he's doing.
No, and that's why, like, I look at Canada and say I would love a Pierre Poilievre on steroids, but his name is Maxime Bernier, and Canadians the majority don't yet seem to know that they need him. What was I going to say?
Why is Maxime not broken through? Because I've looked at that, and I really love what is happening, and it's exciting when you see the policies in place and the PCP party, and yet it hasn't broken through. Is that because of the electoral system? Is that because of how local politics works? Is that because the media is a combination of all those? Because you can't be stuck with Trudeau forever.
Peter, I ran for the PPC.
I know you did.
Okay.
I know.
And now I can actually answer this from experience. On the one hand, people aren't ready. Like, it's an amazing thing about this is the majority or a substantial portion of Canadians. The identity is not being American. Oh, we're polite. We don't like firearms. We don't commit violence. Although, go to Toronto, Vancouver, or Montreal these days. And so there's a large portion of Canadians where the identity of being Canadian is almost diametrically opposed to not being American. The flip side, the other thing is that it's the same corruption in Canada that it is in terms of media access. The only difference is Canada's not yet as progressed as America is in terms of independent media. And so you're reliant on the CBCs, the CTVs, the global news in order to reach the majority of Canadians. Because I haven't checked the stats, but I suspect the percentage of Canadians who get their news from independent media is wildly less than America. And so, like, you run. My own friends and family in westbound Notre-Dame-de-Grâce didn't know I was running because I had to beg to get on with the CBC and then beg them to publish the interview because they wouldn't publish it afterward. So it's but the other thing is Canada just doesn't seem ready yet, and it seems to the UK that maybe you're getting closer, but it's like you're not ready. And when people are not up in arms about what's going on, we have to get actually to this because this is the bulk of it. When people are not up in arms that people are going to jail for mean Facebook posts, when they weren't up in arms, or at least too many were not, when people were getting knocks on their doors for COVID posts, how can you help a population that doesn't want to help themselves? You can't force them to drink.
100%. And thank God for Elon Musk. That's all I can say, because he was the opposition to the government. Whenever it wasn't necessarily riots, it was demonstrations. There were maybe parts of them that were violent, but it was an outpouring of utter frustration at the immigration issue. And we got Brexit, so great, we're now in control of our borders. Oh, no, we're not, and no one knows what to do, and it just keeps going up and up. So whenever people vote to get control of your immigration system and the politicians just don't give a damn or don't want to do anything with it or don't understand what to do with it or have the opposite view and just call you racist for wanting your country back. That's the situation we are in the UK, and that's where the frustration happened. And that was August. You had demonstrations happening, and this was because of the three girls.
Just so we're clear, everybody understands this. It was portrayed by the media. Your BBC is worse than CNN in America. A stabbing. It was a murder. Then they said if you suggested the kid was a Muslim immigrant, it was racist. Censored. People went to jail for certain posts along those lines. Turns out they lied and concealed the fact that the kid, although Nigerian,
no, parents are Rwandan.
So everyone thought Christian, but the kid had apparently converted to Islam. Yep. Conclude what you will from it, but they knew that at the time of the murder, multiple murders, young girls. They knew it. They hid it. The people on the ground knew it and were responding to it. The media, the corrupt judiciary comes down with an iron fist, censors people's online posts so that they don't learn that it was actually true, not a rumor, not a racist disinformation campaign, and locked people up for their response to the brutal slaying of three young girls by. He might have been born in the UK, but his parents weren't, and he converted to Islam recently and decided to go stab young girls at a Taylor Swift dance concert or show, and that led to the upheaval, which many of us only learned about well after the fact. Like when they were locking people up, they weren't really even talking about why. They're just like depicting it as violent protests, which we know largely it wasn't, although sometimes it was. And like Tommy Robinson explained to me, where it was violent and where they were smashing windows with missiles, as I know they're called now, was where they were actually harboring known criminals to the population.
Yes, you kind of look at it and you wonder how we've learned, I guess, under the COVID tyranny, but how the media can manipulate a story and turn those who are concerned of evil as the villains. And turn it completely around. So 3 girls get stabbed, 6, 8, and 9. I think they were at a Taylor Swift concert in their school. People become angry and they go as a vigil the next day with candles. They're angry. No information on the killer. No information at all. And then it begins to come on social media. Actually, he's a Muslim immigrant. That was the headline. That doesn't seem to be true. But again, whenever the government withhold information, into that vacuum comes conversation, and the government could have easily shut down by putting out the truth, but they didn't. People got angry because they said something doesn't add up. We're being lied to. So people go out in demonstrations. Then you have up to 1,000 people were arrested over a number of days. And who starts reposting these videos but Elon Musk? And then Keir Starmer says, how dare he, and threats of deporting people to the UK, bringing
I would
in.
say
Sorry, other way around.
extra. It's not even it would be extraditing to some extent, I guess, but
Right.
importing criminals so they can lock them up.
We do need to deport a lot of people. So that is what we really need to do to fix our overcrowded prisons that are full of foreign fugitives. But anyway, so yes, to bring Elon Musk to answer for his crimes of whipping up and promoting this violence. And what did Elon Musk do? He just doubled down, tripled down, and kept putting it out and called Keir Starmer every name under the sun, and two-tier Keir, as in a two-tier police system, a two-tier legal system, started trending. And those individuals some of those people were arrested, tried, and jailed within 48 hours on a judicial system that I'm involved in a legal case with one of the girls who's a survivor of one of the grooming gangs. We have to wait 6 months between court hearings, judges, to decide what happens in the next point. But hey, if you post something on Facebook, you can get jailed within 48 hours, compared to the individual, I think was a child 17-year-old, whenever he stabbed the girl's dead. His trial, I think, is January or February. Now, he's held in custody, but why can't the same legal system that charges someone with a Facebook post and lock them up, why can they not do the same justice against a killer in 48 hours? That would make sense.
It's an injustice what was done to the people. I mean, I wouldn't even want the accused murder. There's due process, but then there's also not rushing it to the point where you're turning into North Korea. But what's even more shocking, Peter, is like when when the rape gangs were on trial, you couldn't broadcast their face, you couldn't say their names. These dudes got convicted, and I thought I was taking crazy pills. Like, oh, he got sentenced to 2 months. I mean, he was just, wasn't it the protest on Saturday? The sentence, the freaking York police, or maybe not York, put their pictures up there and said, look what we just did. This is his name, this is his face, and he's locked away now. I'm like, this is Orwellian madness. It's Kim Jong-un level North Korean Otto Warmbier show trials. And then while the rape gang accused have their faces hidden and their names, censored, these people, because they're, they seemingly white UK people, names put on blast and pictures used on the internet to highlight the atrocity of the government. It served its intended purpose, which was to terrify anyone out of any form of public protest.
It did. And the head of police said, if you posted anything, we will find you. We will find what you posted and we will hold you accountable. And they dedicated, they talked about whole departments in the police going through social media posts. God forbid they would go and get the rapists or the burglars or anyone else. Let's actually go for those who are posting naughty videos on social media. So they delved into this. They spent their time. They went knocking doors. And we've had, recently, Alison Pearson, who's a Daily Telegraph journalist, who was one of the very few mainstream journalists who held the line during the whole COVID tyranny and called everything out for what it was and hasn't changed her tune and said, oh, I was always for you. I was always on the side of freedom. She actually was on the side of freedom the whole time. And she had the police knocking on her door last month for a tweet she put up a year ago that seemingly was from another person called Alison Pearson, the same name. And when the police go knocking on doors of journalists on Sunday mornings to threaten them, but again, the police knocked on her door and she said, well, what post is it? We can't tell you. What was said? We can't tell you. When was it? It was a while ago. How do you defend yourself when the police don't even give you the information of the crime you've committed?
It's a feature, not a bug, is what it is. And so the people are still in jail. Like, it's not like it's stopped. Has there been an outcry to that level of North Korean justice?
The frustrating thing is no. And this is why, and I think reform and what Nigel Farage are doing is great. And I voted for reform and will do in the future, because they're only, Nigel, your only hope. You literally are the only hope for the UK at the moment. But they've been fairly quiet on this. And we've got 700-800 people languishing in jail, some of them with 2.5-year prison sentences. Someone was sentenced to jail for 26 months for racist comments to a dog. Someone else was 26 months for throwing a tin of beer at a policeman. Someone else was jailed for 26 months for filming one of these demonstrations as they were walking home from hospital where they worked as a nurse. You've got all these cases of people who weren't involved in the protests, who simply filmed what they saw, reposted what they saw, or who said silly comments that normally you'd get a slap on the wrist and maybe a £200 fine. But no, this has become much more sinister, much worse. And it's because the government was able to do what they wanted because the media were behind it. And one of the days I saw 6 newspapers, the front page, it was more or less exactly the same story and the same picture. And it seemed to be they were working in collusion to target those who were angry at mass immigration and to point them as the villains in all this and not the murderer. And to top it off, the individual, Axel, whatever his name is, who's being held for the supposed crime of murdering 3 girls, the alleged crime, because he's not guilty, he's not been proved guilty. The newspapers put out pictures of him as a choir boy, 12-year-old choir boy in a school uniform. They're purposely trying to show him as not an evil killer, not someone who's got caught up in either whether this is religious or cultural, and that all has to come out. But he's just a beautiful choir boy in a Church of England school. He wouldn't do any harm. Oh, what? He's maybe killed 3 girls? And it's the Daily Mail have run with his picture as a choir boy often. And I don't know how the media get away with it.
Well, I'm showing you right here, Peter. This is Jordan Neely, the guy who had violently assaulted 3 women on subway cars over a few years. He was one that died after this guy right here, or the white guy, put him in a chokehold when he was threatening people and assaulting people on a subway car. And the media shows, because he was a Michael Jackson impersonator, they do this systematically when they want to build a bullshit narrative. Systematically, violent thugs are portrayed as young, innocent graduates, and the people who they don't like, the politically, racially disfavored, that being white Christians, when they get arrested, are portrayed as like white extremist, far right Nazi, whatever. They do it everywhere, and it's just amazing to hear that it's done mutatis mutandis over in the UK, just as it's done in America, just as it's done in Canada.
It is, and I grew up believing the good of our institutions. Then I've seen friends arrested and fined because they had a cup of coffee with someone on a bench in a park during COVID tyranny. I've seen what's happened to Tommy, and I first met Tommy maybe 16 years ago. And there are very few people like him that have the tenacity and aren't broken by the system. Very similar, as you mentioned, Alex Jones or President Trump, that aren't going to be defeated by the system, that have something within them that is stronger, that courage and that desire to see truth out. And Tommy is one of those. And that's what we need. And my hope and prayer is those individuals who are leaders, that they instill confidence in individuals to push back, because we have to realize the police are not necessarily on our side. They turn a blind eye often. We have to realize the courts are not necessarily on our side. The courts are there to make money for those in the legal system. They're not there for justice. Justice is a byproduct. That's certainly what I've seen in terms of the money that you need to put in to try and get an innocent verdict at the end. And our politicians, time and time again, they've been shown injustice, and they literally do not care. And part of the reason why they do not care is because a lot of our constituencies have always been red or blue, always been Labour, Conservative. And I think it's very much the same in America and probably Canada, where a politician is in a safe seat and they don't have to do anything because they'll probably get voted in again. And that is the danger of having a political system that's so, I guess, where politicians have that absolute power, that because of the boundaries, because of how the media portray them, because of how the culture, society is around it, that actually people just automatically get in and they don't have to do anything. They'll just get in. And somehow that has to change. And I think we've seen a huge change, obviously, in the US elections. We're seeing big changes across Europe. And for the first time, you've got populist parties actually in the European Parliament wanting to push for change. And Viktor Orban just brought his group together. And that's the third largest grouping in the European Parliament. And those things are exciting because that is a threat. That threat has been part of what has forced the German government to collapse, the French government to collapse. And I think we will see something different. But whether or not they let Marine Le Pen in, and I remember driving Marine Le Pen around London 12 years ago, her and Gert Wilders. That was an interesting day. But driving them around London, and those two individuals have stuck to their convictions like very few other politicians. And Gert has taken 20 odd years to get where he is at the moment. And Marine Le Pen is going up and up in every poll. Huge popularity. And I think I saw her party in a by-election last week had 39%. So the game is on in terms of Europe recapturing those freedoms that it once had. And that's why I'm very hopeful for Europe. In a way, maybe 6 months ago I wasn't. And that's why I'm hopeful for the UK. I think that pressure from the US and that pressure from Europe will produce something in the UK. Because I can't imagine the UK being left on the side with everything happening. So yeah, that's my hopeful thoughts for the UK.
Well, I think you're right. We're witnessing something. It's like the populist movement of 2016 2.0. And when they learned the lessons of what they attributed the Trump victory to, the Brexit victory to, free social media, they cracked down on that in 2020. They did what they did to secure that election. And now we have a free internet and a populist movement that is global at this point. And social media platforms where people can share that information, Rumble, Twitter, and beyond. I know it's contagious, and the Trump is the rising tide that will hopefully liberate, or at least rise, all populist movements across the world. Hearts of Oak, it's your podcast.
It is. So at Hearts of Oak UK on Twitter, on X, and at Hearts of Oak everywhere else. And we also stream on War Room. So we stream on our own X, we stream on Rumble, we stream on the website, on Getter. And then over on War Room, it streams on Rumble and Getter. And to me, it's not necessarily about the guests. It's about the relationship and the connections and doing what you can do together that you can't do separately. And I think we are in a time where it's not right and left. It's freedom and tyranny. It's common sense and a socialist state. And I think those of us who are on the right side of history, there's so many connections behind the scenes, so many people working together that aren't officially connected, but because of what we have faced, I think really over the last 4 years, and the COVID tyranny has called a lot of things into question. And because of that, we've had alliances that are formed and networks that have developed and relationships that have been built all across the world. And that's why I think into the Trump victory steps that whole social media, that whole alternative media connections. And I think because of that, it's looking extremely exciting, extremely positive.
I'm writing down a thought that you just generated, what I think is an original thought. I don't need to worry about being on the right side of history when I know that I'm on the right side of the present. Booyah. I just thought that. I'm writing that down so I don't forget it.
Take it as your own, Viva. Take it as your own.
Stolen. I should say borrowed and adapted.
All yours.
I will put the link in the top. Amazing stuff, Peter. It's who was it that put us in touch in the first place?
It was Sam, the great Sam.
It was Sam Sorbo. Okay, and we've been trying to do this for so long, and it's been pinging back and forth. I'm glad we finally did it. It's great to make a virtual connection. I'm not coming to the UK anytime soon. I'm pretty sure I'm on a thorough blacklist there.
You should try it and see what happens.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm not going to. I used to say I won't travel to countries that don't have habeas corpus. I don't care that England has habeas corpus as a matter of principle. They don't have it as a matter of fact. I'm not going. Don't go to China. Won't go to England. Won't go back to France. Won't go to Spain. Not going to go to Italy. Not going to go to Germany. There's not much left. I'm going to go see. I'll go to Yellowstone. I want to travel and see every American state first. So, Peter, what I'm going to do? I'm going to end it here, and we're going to talk for We'll have proper goodbyes afterwards. YouTube, Rumble, locals. I might get a second stream up in a bit to actually do the live commentary of Rachel Gilmore. So stay tuned. I have that paused on the backdrop. Peter, it's been great to meet you. I'm going to put your link.
Rachel will arrive. She will get here.
Oh, no, hold on. I'll show you what I got here. Speaking of government abusing their power and working with the media in their full fascistic trilogy, what is it called? The triad of evil is the media working with corporations, working with the government. That is the definition of fascism. That's what you're living through in the UK. That's what we're living through in Canada. And that's what we hopefully just busted out of in America. So maybe a few more white pills and we'll be good to go. Peter, stick around. We're going to say our proper guys. Everyone out there, thank you. I will see you later today. If not, tomorrow for sure. Thursday, Mike Benz in the local studio. And Friday, the pasture. This guy, I'll tell you about it after we're off. All right, guys, enjoy the day. Peace out.